Another wild week in the AI world. Apple just dropped a paper called The Illusion of Thinking, arguing that so-called reasoning models like Claude Thinking, DeepSeek R1, or even O3 Mini from OpenAI aren't really reasoning at all. According to them, these models are just memorizing patterns really well. Personally, it feels like a last-ditch effort to discredit competitors in a race they are obviously losing. In this episode, we dig into that paper and share some surprising things we learned while promoting our content on social media. If you're working on your own AI project, this might be useful.
I'm Giorgio Zinnaro.
I'm Ivan Peña, and this is Bootstrap for Cash. Good morning, another week, Giorgio. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, I feel conflicted. In a way, I'm a bit sad because we were again rejected by YC, which was expected anyway. But I'm a bit relieved because of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, I don't know in what year, but we are in 2025. And there is kind of like a little civil war happening right now in Los Angeles. Trump, the actual president, sent the not the army. How is it called?
The Army Reserve, right? The National Guard.
The National Guard,
yes,
exactly. He sent the National Guard to Los Angeles to control the situation, and so San Francisco is actually where YC is based on. Is around 5 hours drive from Los Angeles. I think it was 5 hours when I did it, which in the US is nothing, right? So 5 hours for an American to drive is like, yeah, I'm going to buy bread or
coffee.
Something like that. Exactly. For us, you can change the country. But yeah, so I'm kind of relieved because of that, because going now to California might not be the best idea. Although still there is some gap between the two cities, so it should be all okay. But I don't know.
Let's see how it evolves.
Exactly. So I think, maybe not the best time to be accepted by YC. But anyway, still a rejection, which hurts a bit in your ego. So, but we are getting used to it anyway, right?
Yeah, I guess we kind of expected it. I mean, we made some progress, but not enough to show some real traction. So it was really more of a prototype that we presented. I have the feeling we should probably open source that now. I mean,
yes,
it's an interesting prototype, but it would take a lot of effort to to make it really functional. But it's interesting as a research project. And just as a reminder, if you just joined and if you this is the first episode you hear, Ecopilot is this prototype of a mobile app running. It's for iOS and Android, but really on iOS right now. We've got it mostly functional. And the idea is that you can talk to this app, to this assistant. You can really consider it a personal assistant. And it has access to all the APIs that you have on your phone. So you can use this local model, a local LLM, to come up with a plan and use AI agents to call whatever tools, whatever APIs you have on your phone. Think email, calendar, contacts. So you can go through that and send messages, video messages, and you control all of that through speech to text locally. So I'd say it's kind of I think it's a very interesting prototype. Google is going in the same direction with this Project Astra. I think that there is a lot happening there.
A lot of movement towards local models, right?
Yes, and well, you could say Apple itself, of course. You could say you could argue they killed Copilot already, although I'm not so sure about that. So they recently launched this, what is it called? The Apple Intelligence. It's called the Foundation model. So that was the name of the framework. So it's an actual SDK, right, to use that locally. But it seems they are not quite state of the art compared to the rest.
When it comes to AI and Apple, it's always about combination, right? And this is what we are going to discuss today. And Apple released lately a new paper called The Illusion of Thinking, where they claim that the main foundational models like Claude, DeepSeek, and OpenAI O3, and all the O's, so basically the one that claim that they reason, they are not reasoning at all, but they are just memorizing patterns really well. And this is the first kind of, the first alert is like, okay, so they are doing complex math. Thank you. Like, we didn't know already. So to give a bit of background, what is the difference between an LLM and what they call an LRM, which is the ones that are reasoning? It's basically that the LLMs will give you an answer right away whenever you query something, while LRMs will take their time to think, quote unquote, think or reason about the answer. And they will, like a human being, they will take their time to give an answer on the query of the person. So they raised some conclusions in this paper. We are going to summarize them, but there are basically three of them. One is that they claim that the current benchmarks that most of the companies in AI are using to measure the performance of their models are contaminated, because models can have the responses for those complex tasks in their data set. And they say that we need to use more complex tasks to measure this performance. And they use some games. And one of them is the well-known game for us computer scientists, the Tower of Hanoi. You can Google what the Tower of Hanoi is.
The disks have different sizes. You cannot put larger disks on top of smaller disks.
Exactly.
The point is that when it's just 3, which is the starting point, the simplest Tower of Hanoi you can do, then it can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But as you ramp up the number of disks, it starts getting confused, and at some point it breaks down.
Yeah, that was one of the conclusions. But there is one thing here to consider, which is those models. So if you look for Tower of Hanoi on Google, you will find a lot of documentation about how the algorithm works and how you can solve it. And we know that these models have already in their data set the whole internet. So those models have already the knowledge to solve these puzzles. So it doesn't make any sense to say that the current benchmarks are contaminated because the data set contains already the solution for those benchmarks or how to solve them, while for these games that they are using, it's exactly the same. This is kind of like the first red alert on the conclusions from this paper. And the second is that reasoning models perform worse than LLMs for simpler problems. So if Tower of Hanoi, you have 2 or 3 disks, it seems that the results are kind of similar or even worse for the reasoning models. And if you think about it, if I tell you, Giorgio, how much is 2 plus 2? And you start thinking about it.
Or if you tell me, think carefully about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Say, wait, don't give me an answer yet. Just take out pen and paper, think about that for a while, and then come back with an answer.
Exactly.
And I'm kind of conditioned now to say, maybe it's harder than I thought.
You will very probably think that is a tricky question, right?
Where's the catch?
Yeah, what is the catch? And you will start to come up with complex conclusions, and that doesn't make any sense, right? So, yes, here we see that models are like humans. They can overthink. And we have an interesting blog post about this. It's called, I Think I'm Overthinking. Yes. So it seems that AI models also can overthink, which makes sense because they are trained with our data coming from humans. So yes, there are biases. They are basically inheriting the same biases as we have. Then there is another claim, which is that they are unable to solve the difficult problems. So if you increase the Tower of Hanoi to 10 disks, it seems that they are not able to give an answer or to solve this problem. even if you give them the instructions to solve the problem. But we already said that those instructions are already part of their data set because it's all around the internet. I mean, you just need to Google it, Tower of Hanoi, and you will see it. So why in hell a model might not be able to solve something that they know already how to solve? Because it's part of the data set. And here we come again to models are trained with human data. So they inherited our biases. If I tell Giorgio, please solve the Tower of Hanoi for 2 disks, he will probably do it. But if I tell Giorgio, can you please solve the Tower of Hanoi for 10 disks? And if you're not familiar with it, it requires more than 1,000 movements to solve the algorithm. So Giorgio, would you solve a puzzle that takes more than 1,000 movements?
I would probably just open Python and write software for it.
But is it that Giorgio doesn't know how to do it? No, Giorgio knows how to do that. But he's actually reasoning that it doesn't make any sense to invest the energy and the time to solve a puzzle of more than 1,000 movements, right? So what is our personal conclusion here? Models are just lazy, or they are trying to save energy and tokens in their case. We try to save energy, but they have a limited context and they need to, I mean, you can try when you ask ChatGPT, if you're not really precise in your prompt, sometimes it will just return a quick answer without giving many details about it. And that's because I don't know if their program or their system prompt is written like that, but they always tend to save tokens, which is energy basically for them.
Yeah, makes sense. Actually, they used to be more verbose.
Yes, especially ChatGPT.
Yeah, over time, probably I would imagine it's through the reinforcement learning. They managed to drive it down. I don't know. It would be an interesting research actually, how they made them less verbose. Mm-hmm. And it's actually it's a valuable thing, right? I would expect the same from people. I mean, sometimes, of course, sometimes you do need loads of words to explain something, but often it would be better if you could just be concise and go straight to the point. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that they're actually moving towards that direction. Actually, in fact, sometimes I've got the opposite feeling, especially when using Cursor, or Claude or whatever model is behind, saying, why are you writing so much code? You could have done that in 5 lines. Sometimes I actually end up deleting everything it does because I get annoyed that it's writing so much code. I think I have to maintain that later. Please don't. It makes this, maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is there, but it's often writing even too much code, more than it's needed.
So it's actually like humans. When you need them to be verbose, they are not verbose, and they're short in words.
Well, yeah, you're right. I've had that problem with countless junior engineers, right? So it's often a problem, in fact, now that you mentioned that. Writing way too much code and reinventing the wheel. And why didn't you use that? We already had those libraries. It was just in the folder next to it. Oh, I didn't know about that. I guess Cursor is doing the same. It's not even reading all of the code. It just goes and, I'll write a new HTTP library here.
But it's interesting that you said that you would program something to solve the puzzle, because actually one of the influencers that I'm following on YouTube, he did that. He asked Gemini to build a web app to solve the Tower of Hanoi puzzle, and it did, and it worked. Actually, it told the web app, please do it for 10 disks, and it did it. So the model knows how to solve it. It's just that it doesn't want to, because we could say that it's programmed to save energy, like we do, right? And then we are concerned about the effects of AI, all the consumption, and how it's destroying the world. But then at the same time, we are saying, oh, no, they don't know how to do something. No, they are just trying to save energy. And so, yeah, this is I mean, it's just a personal opinion, right? But it really feels that AI is going to be the next revolution. It's already been. It's happening already. And Apple is right at the end. So it really feels, it's a bit sad because like where we were discussing before, coming up with these clickbait papers and stuff, this looks more from a small company trying to make a buck, right? And it makes sense. You are trying to survive every day. So you are trying to make a buck. So you try to use as many tricks as you can, and clickbait is one of them.
Just be noticed, trying to be known. But I don't think Apple needs to be known.
Exactly. Coming from one of the biggest companies and most expensive companies in the world with a well-established business model is kind of sad.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from in a way. I think you could say yes, they're trying to justify the fact that it seems like they're not making much progress on AI, and that could be one argument. At the same time, I believe they are also trying to justify why they are delaying going. They are trying to delay going all in on AI. I've got this feeling a bit. So something that Apple always did. I'm not so sure if maybe they are changing, right? Maybe they are changing. Johnny Ive is now at OpenAI. He's no longer at Apple. So maybe what I'm saying now is not even true. But they used to put a lot of effort into making some user experiences that were consistent and worked. And I mean, you can say many bad things about Apple as many other companies and platforms, but for example, the way their ecosystem integrates, the way Mac and iOS and Apple Watches integrate with each other, they have a delightful user experience. It's just obviously they've got an unfair advantage there, so they control everything from the hardware to the software of all these things. So obviously, yeah, they can do it because of that, and you could argue they should have contributed those back as standards, and then everyone could have done it. But it's obviously much harder. They spent they invested a lot in that, in making a great user experience, something that just works. For example, if I copy something from my phone, I can paste it in my Mac. This thing, it may sound stupid, but there is a lot of work that goes into that, and it's a great user experience. You can't deny that. And doing it securely and in a way that works consistently, it's tricky. It's really a hard thing to do.
And I wanted to tackle that point that you just said, security. Do you think that because of this focus on security, that everything is private and we are done stealing your data and so on, is one of the key points that they are losing this race, and Google is winning because Google is the company with more data in the world? I mean,
don't care.
Sometimes it felt like quite illegal, and actually it was illegal sometimes. They went to the trial because of that. But AI needs data, and Google has a lot of them, and Apple doesn't because they focus on security.
Well, yes, I think. I mean, you actually probably there are a couple of problems. They are orthogonal. You got a couple of orthogonal problems. So you got security and privacy. Mm-hmm. So on one end, moving in a way that you're sure that, for example, AI is not leaking data, right? You're not doing something that suddenly you're leaking data and somebody is able to see your emails, right? That would be a security problem, a vulnerability. And many AI companies are lacking on that front. Vibe coding stuff and I mean, we shouldn't not even the time to get into that now. It would be its own podcast probably. And then as you say, private data privacy. So using data, where do you source that data to train those models? And obviously Google, they already have that data. People mostly didn't care, and that's why they gave them all that data so far. and Meta as well, right? Because Facebook and all the other platforms within the Meta ecosystem, and they're also making very good progress on AI. Like I say, they've got more data because of their history, whereas Apple try to be more careful with all these data gathering. That could be an argument. Yes, I think another argument that is often ignored is that they have a very strong not invented here attitude. So not invented here is they don't use anything that they didn't invent themselves. You could see through many things, like the Swift language. I was going to say Safari, although to be honest, they didn't start a WebKit. They actually they came from the outside. The actual engine. I mean, they go pretty hard with this not invented here thing, and so I can imagine they want to train their own models. So they really want to do it from scratch. They will not use something that comes from third parties and they cannot trust 100%. And I think it may go hand in hand a bit with that.
But this is changing, right? Because if you see the latest news from Apple, one is the foundation thing that you described before, but the other one is that Xcode, their coding tool, now integrates with other models, right? So it seems that they realize that they are losing the game. And I agree with that. I agree with, if I were Apple, I would do this. It's like, we are good at this. We are losing at this thing. So let's stop trying to beat whoever. They will never beat Google just because of the data. Nothing else. And that's another thing. Why all these Chinese models are racing now and beating their counterparts in the US? Because China doesn't care about privacy.
Right? That's well, they did some interesting things. Right now, it seems everybody forgot, but I don't think it was ever. I don't think it was ever proved wrong. It seemed DeepSeek was a distillation of ChatGPT. So in the end, DeepSeek was so cheap because they got all the data they needed out of ChatGPT. They didn't even need to have the data. They would let ChatGPT come up with the data. And if I remember correctly, it went as far as sometimes DeepSeek just claiming to be ChatGPT. So who are you? And we'll go, oh, I'm ChatGPT, overriding even the system prompt.
Yes,
because he was trained so heavily on ChatGPT's answer. And as China didn't care. They just did it, and so I mean, the quite a few ethical questions, but again, probably for another podcast. But I have the feeling Apple, they didn't want to do that initially, not even opening up to other models, I would guess. But you're right, probably not having enough data from their existing users, gathering data for 20 years like Google did, actually more than that. Paid off for Google. And
if you remember, we had this interview with a possible prospect with a company, a big corp, and they created their own programming language. I know you know what I'm talking about. They created their own programming language, and they started now to create kind of like a copilot to vibe code their own programming language. What's the problem here? That programming language is not public.
In the training set.
Exactly. There is not enough data to train a model to get good results on this programming language because they decided many years ago that it was not going to be public. So there is nothing on the internet. It's only internal stuff. And that's not enough data to fine-tune a model on something. And I think this is happening also to Apple. But this is just a personal opinion. And I need to say, I'm biased. I hate Apple. And like our last guest that loves Apple, Rodrigo, you're listening. We know you love Apple. I mean it like as a consumer. I hate that I have to buy many things because nothing integrates with Apple apart from Apple products. So if I have to code for iOS, I need a Mac. So yeah, I had to buy a Mac because I wanted to code for iOS. They created this kind of ecosystem that many people are happy. Like Giorgio is happy because, oh, I can do all this and everything integrates all together. I don't want that.
I would be happier if it was a standard, as I said. To be honest, I would be much happier if those features became some sort of standard and I could use that between my Linux ThinkPad, which I also love, and my other Android phone. I've become very pragmatic, so I also don't like Apple for many reasons, to be honest. But I can praise them where they do right. And I think some things, user experience, at least so far, I have a feeling that's a bit changing. The latest releases, I didn't want to download the beta yet. It's not the right time now to try out the new macOS 26 and iOS 26. But I'm not quite sure what they did there. Right? I don't think that was done to create a delightful user experience. They just had too much time on their hands and.
But focusing on the underground thing, right? If you're good at something, focus on that something. Why are you trying to beat someone else that is much better than you on this? Doesn't make any sense. You're losing the race, and it's clear. And this paper is really a desperate move. And really sad, believe me. Please stop doing it. But as a business, like an investor, from an investor point of view, Apple is a great business. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just talking as a consumer.
Especially now, they're much cheaper now.
Yeah, actually, that's right. Maybe it's a good time to invest in Apple.
So this announcement didn't go well for their stock.
So there are other topics we wanted to discuss, some interesting findings. So one is the performance of our last episode was pretty good. More than what we expected. And actually, we got the historical record on streams, and in just a couple of days. So we can draw some conclusions here that it seems people like other people's stories, which is going against what many gurus out there are saying, like, you should be special, do whatever other people are not doing. Well, everyone is doing interview-like podcasts. And it seems the market is what it wants, right? So at the end, probably we will have to do the same. So we cannot do anything else, right? It's just how it is. The market likes other people's stories, and it makes sense, right? So yeah, we will try to go towards that. And then there is another thing. Yesterday, we published our first short. There is a new model, video generation model from Tencent, from China. And the result is pretty good. It's actually, in a way, better than VO3 in what they do, because VO3 it's true that you can do filmmaking. I wouldn't say that you can create a whole film with it, but I think they're going towards that because they created a specific product for it, right? Flow. And this model from Tencent is not doing that. It's more like for avatars, like you give an image of whoever with an audio or a script, and then they create a video out of it with lip sync, and the result is really good. So we did our own research, our own test with one of my pictures from years ago, and we published this in a short on YouTube and Instagram. Most of our videos so far didn't have more than 30 views on YouTube. In one day, this short got 150 views on YouTube. So it seems there is no way around it, and we need to start creating video content, Giorgio. Especially short content.
I'm preparing my set.
Yeah. Giorgio already moved all the furniture in his home so he can start recording videos from home. And then another interesting finding is that we took a break on X, really a couple of days. It was not much. Before that, I was getting in my comments or in my post, I was getting replies, I was getting likes, I was getting views. It was getting better, little by little. I took this break, a couple of days really, and then I tried again, and the views were reduced considerably, and really my posts were exactly the same content. It's just questions for people to engage. And before it was working, but now it's not working anymore. So the views are reduced. I got a couple of likes and no replies at all. And I tried several times already. So this comes to the discussion whether all these platforms, because if you remember with Spotify, we had the same issue. We missed 1 week on our podcast and we got penalized heavily by Spotify. But it seems it's not only Spotify, it's all the content platforms. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? They are content platforms. So if you don't provide content, you are not giving added value to those platforms. So it makes sense that the algorithm penalizes you. But then we come back to the discussion. It's like once you start being active on social media, you become a slave of social media. Because you cannot even go on vacation, it seems. At least at the beginning, right? Once you have more than 1,000 subscribers and all that, then you have a stable base. I guess you can go on vacation without any problem. You will probably not lose. Maybe you lose a couple of them, but it's not much. But when you're starting, it's really slavering to social media.
Never stop.
Yes. And I don't know if it's worth it, to be honest. If you are not really into this for the long term, if you don't really like podcasting or posting on social media, it's going to be fucking hard. And I remember on Reddit, we found one of the subreddits from podcasting. A guy created a post asking, "Hey guys, I was wondering, how long did you need to make your first pack with podcasting?" And I remember all the replies were laughing at him, like, making what? Like, man, if you're not for the long term on this, just drop it now. You will not get rich or much money from this until, I don't know, probably a couple of years or so. So it's really a long game. And that makes us wonder if it's really worth it for us, right? Do you see yourself, Giorgio, being a podcaster once we make one of our products work?
Well, I do like, especially when we bring on guests, to be honest. So it's...
That's true.
think that there is quite some added value in that. And, well, it's a good excuse, right? Also to to talk to interesting people. And I guess maybe they wouldn't do it on their own, right? They won't just go and start a podcast to tell their story. So if we do manage to make this work, I do enjoy it, I have to say. It's a bit outside of my comfort zone. I'd rather spend my whole day writing code. But I do like pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And I think we're getting better at this. And I also like that. I like learning new things. So yeah, the more we do it, the less I see myself stopping to doing that.
But you could do it like as a hobby, right? And not, if 1 week you don't want to provide content, you just don't do it, right?
Well, I mean, I for sure, I hope we get to the point that if I don't want to do something for a week, I can stop. Yes. Yeah, I don't want to be a slave to Spotify, if that's what you mean. Mm-hmm. But I also believe, as you say, that if you do manage to make it bigger and you keep going through and through the deep and up to the point that you do have some followers, somebody likes what you're doing, I think they will excuse you if you take 1 week off. I think it does get to that point. Right now, yes, it's more that we are conditioned by the almighty algorithm, and of course we have to please it. But hopefully at that point, when you get to enough followers, they are more understanding than a machine.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Okay, that's it for today. And anything on your plate, Giorgio, that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I think we have got lots of stuff for more episodes. And see you next week.